Andrew Williams. Friends call you Andy?
Friends call me Andy.
Okay. He's been a legend in the Montreal community for about 13 years. Involved in youth development, involved in mentoring, involved in teaching, and most importantly, as a role model. Before we get into what you've been doing for the last 13 years, let's talk a little bit about how you got here. Originally from Jamaica?
No, originally from Derbyshire, England.
Okay.
My folks are Jamaican. And I've got a little bit of Cuban in me, but I don't really know my history due to the circumstances that I don't want to. That's another story.
Leads into the Afrocentric school discussion.
It leads into the Afrocentric school discussion. That's right.
So you did a couple of years of education in Derbyshire, then some.
Yeah, I spent the first 12 years in Derbyshire, then went to Jamaica. Went to a school called Clarendon College, which is in Chapelton, Clarendon, which is pretty much the dead smack middle of Jamaica. It's inland. Great schooling, mostly a lot of missionaries, volunteers, and a few top Jamaican teachers who are actually prominent in the Jamaican community. Great training. It's probably one of my best training ever in the education system. By the time I got here in grade 9, I was already ahead by probably a grade or two, just by the amount of education I was getting.
And speaking of education, there was Toronto Medical University.
No, I did a
Bishops.
Yeah, I initially I went to Parkdale Collegiate for my secondary education. My post-secondary education was Bishops University from 81 to 84.
Played basketball?
I played basketball there. Went from there to Loughborough University for exercise physiology program in 84, and that's when I ended up being in England for a bit, and that's when I ended up playing for the John L. Turbo's basketball team.
A professional team in England?
It's a professional team in England, yeah. And from there I came back, went to the Toronto Medical Institute of Technology, doing chiropody, chiropodal treatments, which is dealing with the feet. And then, I just explored a lot of different areas within sports injuries. I wanted to do sports massage. I wanted to do biomechanics. It was all a matter of learning the science and getting all the things that I wanted to know about sports mechanics and orthotics, the various modalities. And I explored a lot, but, being Andy Williams, I got a little bored.
So a terrifically
move on.
terrifically well-rounded background led you to the last 13 years here in Montreal.
I came here because I wanted to teach. I was tutoring at a school called West Hill Collegiate in Scarborough. At the time, I was working at Feet First, doing biomechanics. I got the job through a dear friend, Laurie Marucci, and I thought it was time for a change. So I ended up in Montreal. I got accepted into McGill University.
In Montreal, you've worked with the Heads and Hands program based out of NDG.
Yeah.
You've done mentoring. You've done
that's
teaching.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
What have been some of your impressions of this city and what the city needs?
Oh, it's a great city. Montreal's, as I refer to it, is the last Bohemia. I mean, you can go to San Francisco, you can go to Copenhagen, you can go to Barcelona, a lot of the places that I feel are, that are very bohemian, but it's not affordable. Montreal is, I've got a beautiful pad here, and I'm paying pretty much peanuts compared to, I wouldn't even get a basement apartment in Toronto for what I've got right here.
Outstanding.
To be honest with you, yeah. So it's not only that, it culturally it's really above par. There's a lot of artists within my community here, which is Mile End. In Toronto, I had more of a clique. I had like a group of 20 people I'd hang out with. In Montreal, I'm all over the place, and I don't really have a clique here, and that's really interesting too, because I can mix it up with the French population. I can mix it up with the Anglos. I can mix it up with the Africans. I'm not saying Toronto doesn't have that, but it's more accessible.
So you find in
to do,
Montreal
yeah.
that you don't necessarily need a clique because everyone is accepting of everyone?
To a certain extent, people might disagree with me because of the race matters and whatnot, and the whole language issue. But it's deeper than that. I think that's the old school way of thinking. If you go out east, you can actually see that within the French community. But once you're in a 5-mile radius of downtown Montreal, the Plateau, the Mile End area, that's fine. Saint Henri, NDG, you can get away with just being an Anglo as opposed to mixing it all up.
And working with different community outreach programs over the years, such as Heads and Hands, based out of NDG, what are some of your impressions of the youth of the city, and specifically, what do the youth of the city need to set them on the right path?
That's a good question. I've being on the streets with the youth, I realize how, in some ways, how uncouth I was. I've got a lot of learning to do. A lot of the kids on the street are multilingual. They speak 3 or 4 languages, which was amazing to see. There's a lot of help here. There's a lot of grants that were at Head and Hands to help the youth. It's a great program for youth prevention, intervention, and prevention in a lot of areas. From drugs to the homeless. There's not too many poverty-stricken areas in the downtown Montreal area, as opposed to Toronto, the vastness of the other cities. Your Toronto, New York, Ottawa lately has been having visible homeless people. I've been noticing that. I just did a DJ gig there last week, and it's one of those things where the help is there, and also there's a lot of grassroots organizations here that are willing to roll their sleeves up and get to it. It's not just Head and Hands. There's Stella. There's what's the name of the people on the bus? There's Father John.
Emmett. Father Emmett John.
Father Emmett John. There's a lot going on in the city and on a grassroots level.
Okay, and what are some of the things that you're involved in right now? What were some of the projects that you are working on right now in terms of mentoring, teaching, helping the youth?
Okay. I'm teaching at a school called Centennial Academy. I'm also involved with a tutoring service program there. Kids are really labeled as being unruly, but they're probably the smartest kids in the system. But that's fine with me. It's all attention seeking, really. They just need to have a voice, and they need people to listen to them. It comes down to that, really. The more you listen, the more you get out of them, as opposed to having strict authoritative rules and just saying, well, this is how it is. Give them the platter, open up the minds, open up your arms. I think it's all about that, really.
And as smart as the kids are, they realize that it's a role model that they see that they will listen to. You're involved in very, very many things.
That's right.
You mentioned yourself DJing.
Right.
You've been doing a musical show for the last 6 years called The Goods?
Yeah. The